Man, being Mark Tremonti must be sweet. Think about it. He's gotten to work with rock royalty, literally. He's sold just millions upon millions of records between Creed and Alter Bridge, and now the records that he's selling under his solo name. He's probably one of the most well-respected guitar players of the rock and even the, heavy metal variety, some would even say, of the past 20 years. What's not to like about a guy who actually works really hard and has great licks, great chops, and whenever the chips are down, always seems to just go after what he wants to do as opposed to what everybody else wants him to do. Mark Tremonti has a new solo album out entitled Cauterize. This is brand new, his second solo release, and it's not the end, actually, for the releases under the Tremonti name. In fact, there is another album's worth of material that is set to be released either later on this year or early in 2016 entitled Dust. So, if you thought that 44 minutes of new Tremonti music was not enough, there will be more coming, so just be patient. But Mark Tremonti's been in Creed, he's been in Alter Bridge, now he has this, he's helped other groups. And what's interesting is there was a magazine article a number of years ago that listed Blackbird from Alter Bridge as having one of the best guitar solos of all time, actually the best guitar solo of all time, above songs such as Stairway to Heaven. We covered Fortress by Alter Bridge about 2 years ago, and of course that was an album that was exceptionally well received, not only by myself but also by a lot in the media. He's a great guitar player with a great band, and now his solo work is going to be getting just the same amount of hype because he has a great songwriting ear and a great pen. What I really like about this disc and what I really like about this project is the fact that he kind of, and it came to be with a love of speed metal, but it was something that he was able to add melody to and really give it that nice little hard rock exterior, the type of thing that you'd hear on a sampler for classic rock magazine, and it would immediately still stand out. This is hard rock of this new age that certainly applies and appeals to a lot of different generations. All of those folks that are really big into guitar-driven rock and roll music from the 70s and the 80s. I'm thinking of bands such as Guns N' Roses, either that or any of the big groups from the 70s, Led Zeppelin included, will certainly listen to this and be immediately impressed. Now, some folks may be a little turned off by introductions of songs such as the opener, Radical Change, that definitely showcases more of that speed metal approach, but I think it's kind of nice because you have this kind of rough and gruff beginning to this track, which then evolves into the melody, and what it does is that it showcases a lot of the elements of Tremonti's hand. It shows that he does have that ability to really write something that has an aggressive, really it has a very, very sharp edge to it, but then he's very easily able to kind of turn that on its heels 180 degrees and really backpedal to some great melody. And once he gets another 90-degree turn to that mid-range, which includes his soloing and just his overall rhythm specialty, it's something that creates very, very solid music. It creates very solid music that, for all intents and purposes, you would think would be a bit formulaic, but Tremonti is such a really seasoned songwriter at this stage from his work with the bands he's been with that he is now able to offer surprise almost at every turn. I really love the title track on this disc. I thought it was a strong, strong representation of what this is all about. But the single, Another Heart, is just a really impassioned song that showcases a lot more of his dynamisty. The guitar soloing on this disc is sort of what you would expect from Tremonti. It's actually the one highlight that you kind of expect considering some of the accolades that he has received as a guitar player, and it's all worth it considering he has a really good personality as far as his instrument is concerned. It's something that has that really deep and distinct hard rock root, and it really just reminds you of the old shredders from the 70s and the 80s that really incorporated a lot of melody and incorporated a lot of soul in their playing. It's definitely one that has a lot of root in what you would hear perhaps from a Kirk Hammett from Metallica, though definitely thrown into a mixing bowl with, I would say, a little bit of Slash and a little bit of Jimmy Page in order to really incorporate and kind of witch's brew a style that is just really kind of unique and and sort of stands by itself very nicely. I think the second half of this album falls off a little bit. I think that the first half is a lot more memorable, but the second half does also boast the final track, Providence, which is a very fitting and also the longest track on this album. It's a very fitting finale. It's one that kind of summarizes everything while having and maintaining a little bit of a difference to it. I would have liked to see this song perhaps even take me on another left turn or two. But I'm not going to complain, considering that there's a just great, it's a real great exercise in pacing, not to mention it also has just a solid makeup, a solid body to it. Should we be surprised that Tremonti has put out a solid solo record? And I think the answer to that question here in 2015 has got to be no. The guy's just on a songwriting roll, and he just has the ability to really craft very, very excellent hard rock music, stuff that you really would enjoy kind of riding along to on your way to work, or perhaps on a big summer trip, considering we are now in summer season. This is a gentleman that has really evolved his style a good bit, if you consider the earliest Creed work going into Alter Bridge and now getting to this point. There has definitely been an evolution for Mark Tremonti as a guitar player that has certainly allowed him to be a whole heck of a lot more of the focal point of the groups he's been a part of. It's almost like Jimmy Page going from Led Zeppelin and becoming a member of the Black Crowes, only in that band you don't hear the same guitar shredding that you heard in Led Zeppelin. Instead, it's something very melody and rhythm driven, and it's a band environment that has that jam philosophy. With Tremonti, it's definitely a gentleman who went from a group where one of the main focuses was Scott Stapp's personality, Scott Stapp's voice, and the words that he was singing. And you go to that with Alter Bridge, where you actually have more of a 50-50 balance between the music of Mark Tremonti and the rest of the band, along with Miles Kennedy's just fantastic voice, which I think supersedes Scott Stapp's, to now Tremonti, where he actually shows, which he did on his first album as well, but he shows that he could just as easily be the lead singer of a group and have somebody else. Imagine a super group with Mark Tremonti just doing vocal duties. He's got a very solid voice and has a great range. But then you throw in his guitar talent, and it's something that you have to marvel at. He is what you would call a true musician. I would give this album, honestly, an 81 out of 100. Like I said, I feel the second half kind of gets a little bit weak near the end, rolling out into Providence. However, I feel that the body of work has enough impression to be left that it's extremely solid. It leaves me kind of thirsty for Dust, and also thirsty for the next Alter Bridge album, which is supposedly going to be recorded in the studio in 2016. What do you think about Mark Tremonti? What do you think about Cauterize? What do you think about his work with Alter Bridge, or just the man in general and his career in general? That can include Creed. Let me know in the comments below. I'm very interested in knowing, and we're going to kind of take a right-hand turn after this review and go from this hard rock work to Gorgoroth. That should be interesting, right? Stay tuned. We'll see just how interesting it gets.